Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Frank and Stan chat. This is a spotlight edition, number 27 in that series, and we're absolutely delighted to be able to invite back two guests who have been with us before. That's Glyn Potts and Neil Jurd. Good morning, gents.
Good morning, both of you.
Yeah, thank you
Good
so much for
morning.
joining us. Yeah. Should we start with Glyn? Glyn, you've been a guest, well, both of you have been a guest with us. So you would just like to briefly just summarize, who you are and perhaps why we're here chatting this morning?
So I was very lucky. I started as a teaching assistant in the school I ended up being the head teacher of. Started there in 2004.
Wow, we should do a spotlight on that alone.
Well, you say that because I think that's one of the educational legacies that's becoming less and less prevalent of people staying in communities and building communities, which was a real key point of what I wanted to do as my role as head. I left there last April, but all throughout my time as deputy and head teacher, I recognised that whilst I was getting lots of qualificational courses, I wasn't getting any leadership courses. And I reached out to Neil, and we had a real journey of equipping leaders. And I think we got to 5 leaders who left me and became head teachers as a consequence of going through sort of that leadership nurturement. So I'm really interested in the chat this morning.
Well, that's fantastic because the McInerney Teacher Tap survey that came out last week was demonstrating that there are significant fall in the number of people who want to be head teachers. Significant. So it's all very timely. This, Neil, welcome back. So give us a brief summary of your significant career and
Thanks.
why you're involved in this.
Well, my first career was as an army officer, and I had a huge interest in leadership there. I taught at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, for 2 years, but for the last 15 years or so, I've been working in leadership development, and I wrote a book called The Leadership Book, and I found it on.
Yeah, we're all looking for our copy. Mine's too far away. Oh, we've got the hardback copy. I've got the paperback like Stan.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so I wrote that, and I founded an online learning platform, and my company, Leader Connect, run leadership development, and we work with quite a few schools. I started with Glyn actually, like maybe 10 years ago, was it, Glyn? That you were the first school that I was involved with, and I find that so rewarding because I see the difference that it makes.
Yeah. I've been involved in some leadership courses as a presenter in the last sort of 10 years. And there's sort of two things happening here. A lot of these are government driven courses. So they have an underlying sort of philosophy and approach within them. And people that have been asking me to present on those courses say things like, well, we got the presentation approved by the Department for Education, but what we're actually going to do is this.
Yeah.
Which I really, I value that sort of approach, but it also highlights the sort of problems about leadership programs. So what was the genesis of your thoughts in terms of developing this program? And has it got an official title?
Leadership development program. All leadership courses are called the same things, but leadership development program.
Yeah, I was thinking, the Potts and Jurd or the Jurd and Potts leadership program.
Well, let's just stick with leadership development. But it's accredited by the Institute of Leadership. So any teacher who goes through it, any participant who completes the course gets MIOL after their name. But from my point of view, it's from years of working with schools, but also with other businesses. I should say that my company, we work with Sanofi Pharmaceuticals, University of Sheffield, loads of other companies. But I've just found that the same methodology, the same ideas apply in schools as in business. Leadership is leadership. So it's emerged from that. Actually, working with Glyn was extremely useful for me because, gosh, we must have done probably 30 coaching sessions or something
Yep.
over
Yeah.
the years. And I learned a lot from the process as well. And I think it was you, Glyn. You were one of the people that said I needed to write a book. Um,
Well,
and
I mean, my experience of it, Neil, was we were obviously at a school relatively inner city, 43% disadvantaged. People were going to come and work for me is because I had to inspire them to do the difficult job. They could go and work in Didsbury or another school, a grammar school, and still get paid and still have a lovely career as a teacher. I didn't want that. There had to be a burning passion inside them. Nothing about my tutelage from a teaching assistant through to NPQH told me how to do that. And that was where the approach came when I was deputy talking to you, Neil, saying, how do we get people to run through fire for children that aren't their own? Because most teachers will say they care very much about children, but equally they've got to care about themselves. And it was through that we found that there's this big gap between what they were being taught at university or taught on national programs and the actual reality of leadership, because they were promoted for being great in the classroom, not for being great leaders. And that was
Yeah.
that tension.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, how is this a program that actually is relevant for existing senior leaders, like the head teacher or the principal,
yeah,
as well as those on their journey through? Because I think that's quite important, because I think that's something that everybody assumes, that when you've gone through the hurdles to get to the head teacher or principal position, actually you've done all your courses. It's now real life. You know what I mean? So it
Mm.
does actually address that. So
yeah. That's when you feel most exposed, I think, when
yes,
you got there without the nurturing and the because okay, some people have the right background or experience to pick up quite a lot of leadership on the way, but you won't pick it all up.
mm,
And most people don't really. They don't. They do lots of management courses. They know how to timetable. They know how to deal with the finances. But actually, leading is something quite different.
yes,
So people find themselves, in my experience, and again, Glyn, you've seen a lot more head teachers than I have, but people find themselves in that top job feeling quite exposed. Imposter syndrome very, very often crops up, and the temptation then is to play the part of head teacher. Think what sorts of things does a head teacher do? How do I need to look? And that prompts certain behaviours which are not necessarily authentic, and actually I'd say are quite limiting. If you're trying to be something that you're not quite,
yes.
rather than being yourself with passion and energy, you will get a really different school. You'll get a limited effect.
And
Yeah.
you see that, Neil, in those schools that will say, or those colleagues that will say, my vision or my goal for the school is to get good at Ofsted or whatever the
Yeah,
grading is going to be now. That's not a vision, that's an outcome. And that was where, certainly when we started working with you, it took a lot of time for our staff to understand that outcomes relating to Ofsted are a byproduct to the overall journey we want to take this community on. And I
yeah,
remember sitting in a room in a hotel somewhere near Preston with you. We spent a full day refining what my vision was going to be, because it had to outlive inspection. It had to be much broader and about the young people I served. And that was when I certainly felt my leadership impact changed from do this because Ofsted are requiring it to we're going to set the world on fire, because imagine where we could be in 10, 15 years. And that's when it became much easier and much more authentic.
It
I mean, have
reminds
you
me
ever?
of my when I was in headship, the sort of light bulb moment. At the time, it wasn't Ofsted so much as SATS results,
Mm.
Mm,
and the way we did things was very different from the way the authority wanted us to do things. But we had very successful results, and I kept thinking, well, do I need to change the way the school runs in order to do it the way other people said? And the light bulb moment was no, if my way produces the results as a byproduct of what we're trying to do to build these children's self-esteem, that their qualities, that to make them a rounded person, if in the end of that they're getting very good results in English and maths as well, then I'm okay doing what I do.
Mm.
Um,
yeah,
and it was so almost a stop one day and say, no, I don't have to change. I don't have to sort of conform to what people are telling me. And it was when I stopped doing things that the DFE said we had to do.
yes.
I mean, I'm interested in terms of you spending time, both Stan and Glyn there, about just thinking about what my vision is, where this is all heading. But then I think that there comes some white heat when you try and sort of convince others, perhaps with an existing team, as to how this is now worth jumping on board with. And I mean white heat on the basis of, fierce opposition, perhaps not from all, but from some sectors or members of the potentially staffing and the parent back community. I mean, how does your course help leaders face up to that? Because the white heat is something you really only get to feel when it's really in front of you, I feel. It's difficult to imagine. For me, it's difficult to imagine what warfare's like, or to actually have, real bullets firing at you across a field. What that feels like can only be felt really at the time of it happening. So how does your course manage to get people into that sort of territory?
When you said fierce opposition, my mind stopped at fear.
Ah, right, that's interesting.
I
Yeah,
think that's people are often so scared of getting something wrong that they're too scared to actually do things brilliantly.
yeah,
Being just good enough, like achieving the grades, ticking the boxes, being Ofsted ready, gets in the way of being fantastic, what you could be.
Yeah.
The school, so we've the course has a lot of coaching on it. So, for instance, we've got a school that we're working with who are being Ofsteded as we speak, actually. So that would be really interesting. But I have coached one to one every one of the ELT. So this is no longer the head with his own
mm,
who's done a bit of training and is hoping it catches. Actually, everybody in an appointed leadership position, which isn't to say that actually every adult in the school is a leader, as well as a lot of the pupils, as well as a lot of the parents. But a big chunk of people are having this one-to-one support, and then the course focuses on it's experiential. So our courses are designed to be about clear, simple theory that's easy to remember, and then an activity that cements it. But the things we focus on are a clear and compelling purpose, and we keep coming back to that. And then the fact that everybody must get the same clear and compelling purpose. And you can see when you get that in an organization, and when you have, and another thing is having difficult conversations. We talk about the need to
yeah,
communicate. We test it. Um, so we don't allow, or we would suggest that a leader cannot allow passive resistance. You have to engage, you have to talk, you have to keep talking until you've got people excited about what you're trying to achieve. And if they're not excited, maybe you're trying to achieve the wrong thing. Maybe it's on you, but you keep talking until you've got that shared energy. Again, Glyn, you'll have another perspective on this, I expect.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we in my first year of headship, I was trying to refine. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to not just follow the Ofsted model because it was too easy to do that, and just to say that we were only going to meet the needs of a small minority of children, the safe children that we wanted to be a school that served our community, and we weren't a safe community, so we accepted and welcomed risk. And that was really difficult for some of my staff because they realised that that was going to make their job harder when Ofsted came. Not their job harder on the daily basis because they were committed, caring people, but they knew that the results might not be as they would want them to be because we're taking children who had emotional based school avoidance or who had statements or EHCPs.
or been through 4 or 5 other schools in the last 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah. Who had had society say there is nowhere for you to fit.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember the eureka moment in that hotel in Preston with Neil, and I came back to school and I had my vision, and they will be sick to the death of it, but it carried us through some of the most difficult times, including, I lost 6 colleagues who passed away and 2 children in 7 years of headship. And it was because we had this clear and compelling purpose. We will use our vocation of teaching to give an unfair advantage to our community, ensuring no door is closed to them. Nothing in there about Ofsted, nothing in there about outcomes and numbers, because every child needed to know where their starting point was. We expected them to go further and wanted to push them further. And that's how we galvanized the community around that compelling purpose.
So do the people who are on that ELT that you're mentoring and coaching, are they part of the program, or are those additional work that you're doing to make sure that the the inner core of the senior leadership team, sort of they understand how they're going to engage with them, or I'm just trying to get a sense of
No, they're all on it.
it's a fully embraced
Yeah,
thing.
they're all on it, Frank. We've
Right.
got
Wow.
21 from this school on the course, including the business manager,
Right.
which obviously gives the other advantage that they're all doing something
Yeah.
together. They're
Yeah.
not just passing in a corridor and saying hello, miss, hello, sir. They're actually doing something. They're learning about each other. They're learning their character under pressure, and they're talking about it. And so it's brilliant. And we move them around. They work in different groups over it's only 2 days training.
And I was thinking, how much investment would there be for a school on this? So literally, this could just take this school that's being expected
Yeah.
today. I mean, just take us through the engagement level and how you got to know the senior leaders and how it was all set up. I think that'd be quite helpful for schools that might be interested or trust interest in this approach.
Yeah. Well, one of the governors gave me a call actually, and so their head teacher is brilliant. He's the most energetic, passionate, caring. Steve Hennebury, his name is, and I think he's wonderful. And
Mm.
he had become head after the changeover of several heads over a period
Right.
of 3 years, and he was selected to be deputy head, and then within days, I think, the head left, and
Right.
he found himself filling the gap. And this governor said, could I work with Steve? So I spent a day with him over the summer, and it was brilliant. And we kind of, again, I got a lot of energy from him. I loved what he was trying to do, and I think he found the basics of leadership. And I just went through stuff in my book, and that was. And when I say I went through it, we don't just sit and look at the book. I kind of
Page
lay stuff out
27
on the
and yeah.
floor. We go for walks and we talk about it, and I say,
Right.
how does that apply to you? And then we from that, he said, I think this would be really useful for my team. And I said, how many? And it turned out that it was all of them. So the course that we've already had accredited with the Institute of Leadership, we've adapted so we can fit it in two. So it's 2 inset days, basically. It's a
Right.
chunk of coaching, an inset day. Uh, they use our online platform. So they do a course online, then another inset day, a final chunk of coaching, and they get their certificates.
Right. Wow.
In time terms, it's not a huge investment. And actually, in money terms, it's not a huge investment either.
But what I'd say, Neil, is as a school that went through sort of the first iteration of this, and then seeing Dallam going through this, you can see that it bonds the staff. So whilst it's not a huge time commitment in the directed time calculator, which we all know gets talked about, what you end up doing is energizing people that they're carrying on this work beyond their tradition because they see the benefit of it. And even in that short journey, you see the growth of individuals because if you've never had leadership training and you're just a manager and you're introduced to leadership, your impact can be quite significant early on because you're suddenly aware of the fact that you were just managing. And I think that's that beauty of what Neil's course does, is it frees up the mind for people to say, that's important because that's the clear and compelling purpose. The rest of that is noise. And I'm comfortable in my authenticity to know it might not approve with everybody, but it's approved with the right things.
Right.
Neil, you said that the course basically was some basic leadership stuff followed up with an activity to cement it.
Yeah.
What kind of activity were you doing in those days?
All sorts.
I've seen some photographs of these.
Yeah, I'm designing one at the moment that includes a drone with a camera on it, a remote control. In fact, Glyn, you
Yeah.
a remote control tracked vehicle, and you have to select which road you're going to take, and there's advantages and disadvantages
Right.
to each road, and there's kind of unknown unknowns that force the senior leaders to do some thinking, and there's the requirement to delegate. So it's like the senior leaders who are in a different room but can see everything through cameras that are placed in the operating area, and they've got walkie-talkies as well. So they could try and control everything, but if they do, nothing will happen. So it's stuff like that. We've got projects designed to show leaders that the people who are in junior positions can make perfectly good decisions if you get them. So just teach them, show them what the objective is, and let them get on with it and get out of that detail. There's one we use that you might have seen which has a huge garden chessboard.
Yes, that's one I've got in mind. Yeah.
There's sometimes two huge garden chessboards, and the managers in one area and the workers in another. I shouldn't say too much in case anyone's listening who subsequently does it, but they're all designed to bring out points. They all create pressure for time and space and resources, the need to clarify what the objective is, the requirement for some communication, and then the power is in the debrief at the end, where we don't say, well done, you did this right and this wrong. We get them to tell us how it went, and then we just explore it. Well, I thought we did that wrong. Did you say anything? No. Okay, that's interesting. So why didn't you? And we just needle them. And Glyn is brilliant at that. So I'm very lucky in this school's work. I've got Glyn. Who, as you know, is just, amazing. Is wonderful. And then Vicky Maguire, who I'm not sure whether you do know, but she has an education podcast, which is clearly that suggests great talent, doesn't it, Frankenstein? An education podcast. But
there are exceptions to that, though, Kelly.
But she's a former deputy head, and so with Glyn and Vicky, kind of giving some real educational expertise, I think it feels very relevant, and the conversations that go on in because I take a room as well, and the conversations in the syndicate rooms are brilliant.
Right.
They go all over the place, don't they?
How much? Go on, Glenn.
I was going to say, Neil's the Derren Brown of leadership training. Where you get people just going, oh, yes, I get it now. And you have so many of those eureka moments, which is why I'm really passionate about this, because I think we're at a period of time where we're burning through leaders, and we've got to do something about this. And Ofsted aren't acknowledging it. They're not changing the process. DfE are burying their head in the sand and will just recruit more teachers. And actually, if we invested more in leaders in programs like this, the entire system benefits. And as Neil said, it's a relatively small gesture, but it has huge impact.
It's a well-being issue.
I do think we've got to make leadership more attractive for teachers than the way it's moving at the moment is to almost be a middle leader in an organisation, from being promised autonomy and the ability to vision and make that difference. I just worry that we're actually going in the wrong direction with school leadership.
Yeah, because I assume, I'm just guessing, because Dallam is a standalone academy or a maintained school. So in a way, there's an opportunity here actually to begin doing this work further up the food chain in a trust, isn't there? Because actually, I got to be CEO without any CEO training. I went into a meeting and they said, we've got a problem. We need to combine these three trusts and we need a CEO, and we think you're the person to do it. So I never had a formal interview. I had no consideration about what the CEO role was going to be. So I do feel as though there are colleagues still in the system like me who have stumbled into these roles. They might be a standalone academy, and suddenly the DfE say, well, there's two in Barrow that you might like, and suddenly you find yourself in sort of trying to manage a much bigger organisation with different philosophies, different cultures. But bringing all that together would work quite well for your programme, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, with probably the reason that it came together so quickly, though, is that Dallam is a standalone. I mean, it is a MAT if you look it up, but it's the only school in the MAT. Yes. So the decision making, the OODA loop, observation, orientation, decision, action, as we teach it on the course, but it's very easy for them to say, yes, we want that. Obviously, the bigger a trust gets, the more people come to meetings and suck through their teeth and say, well, are you sure? And things just don't happen. That would be a courageous decision, wouldn't it, Chief Executive? And things just don't happen. But yes, absolutely. I mean, we've got a trust bought 150 copies of my book a few weeks ago. So there's interest from trust.
Yes.
It just takes months or even years to get them to say, yeah, let's just run a course. But of course, we could run the course in September. You know,
Yes,
you
yeah,
can start it instantly, pretty much.
And Neil, it takes courage
Mm.
because this is not what DfE are saying is needed. It's not what Ofsted is saying is needed. They're saying just get them on the MPQs. This is
yes,
about investment because you might invest in someone in leadership training. They might move on in 2 years, but the system benefits because they had that, and that's why it takes a bit of time.
yeah,
One of my head teachers, going back some time, this said that she was actively damaged by MPQH, in that it trained her that she was the flag carrying torch, bring it into the school, and my vision will be. And she said what it didn't train me for at all was when the staff said, no, we're not doing that.
Mm.
Yeah, leadership.
yeah,
It's not what we do here.
Wrong, isn't it? It's the idea that one person is the
Yeah.
only active brain. I will come up with a vision and then I will write a detailed plan and everybody has to adhere to
Yeah.
my plan. How firstly how arrogant and how wrong. And it's what gets taught, I know, but to think that your brain is the best brain, why would it be? With 100 staff, what are the odds that the person in charge is the cleverest? And as
Mm.
I often say, if you are the cleverest person in your organization, you must be recruiting thick people. You know, you just why would you do that?
Mm.
Actually, I have to say, Neil, last night I went to there's a local bar near us, and I went for a beer with my guitar teacher, and he went through Sandhurst. So, I found it fascinating talking to him because I think for those of us who've never had that military training, you think that it's all directed training, you know, that actually, you adhere to your officer's commands, and whatever, and you just carry out your duties. And he's just explained to me, exactly the opposite of that.
Hmm.
If you and really trying to quickly get a sense of where's the strengths in particular areas in your team, give them space because when you hit the battlefield, they're likely to have an insight that you need. You know what I mean? It's everybody protecting everybody else. It's really interesting that this idea that this direct leadership, which is what the government sort of pushes really quite hard about this hero leader,
Nonsense.
on the horse
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
front line, get shot at the first minute of the battlefield. I mean, you think that's what you have a vision of, and it's so different.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense. The big head teacher in the yellow coat controlling everything by walkie-talkie. It's nonsense. You can't control everything, and the more you try and control, the less happens. You just have to set a very clear and exciting objective that people buy into, and they buy into it because you know them, you talk to them, you do your research. It's grounded in reality. You have boundaries. You can't do this. You can't spend more than this without us having a chat about it. You can't change this without us having a chat. But broadly speaking, if it serves the purpose, use your brains, use your energy, lead all of you. I'm not the only leader here. You heads of department, you're leading. Heads of faculty, you're leading. Heads of year, you're leading, and you're all leading towards this objective that we've talked about and we agree on. And my objective at my school in Cumbria is going to be different from your objective at your school in Oldham because we're built in different communities. Our children are likely to go on and do different things. The families have got different experiences. So
Mm.
every school is different, and that's why it needs to be led, not managed.
And
Yes.
It does need to be managed as well,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I was going to say the other thing I think
This is kicking Stan off
that,
now. Sorry, Glyn. You'll get in about
going
10 minutes. You'll get into the conversation.
where head teachers take that role of I'm now in the role of a head teacher. It's not them, it's their role.
Mm.
They're the ones that I think get hurt most because they're playing a role and it's not working because it's not them. I mean, I often used to say when people were being interviewed, they'd say, "Well, what should I say?" Well, say what you think because if they appoint you for who you're not, then
Yes.
you're going to run into trouble.
Yeah.
So you're much better off being appointed for who you are and what you believe in than
Mm.
what you can read in a book or whatever. But the other thing I was going to say is I found really important to talk, well, not just to talk to everybody, but seek their knowledge as well. So that when you're a head teacher, walk in the school with the caretaker or the site supervisor,
I couldn't agree more.
really, really
I couldn't
important
agree more.
Mm.
because they see things that you cannot possibly see and they've
Mm.
got solutions to things, but they don't tell you those solutions unless you ask them. They
No.
don't see it as their role to come and say, by the way, if we did this, this, and this.
Yeah.
A tale of a head teacher. I'm sorry, this is a little anecdote.
And we'll finish with Glyn after this because we're going to have to bring it to
a
a
head
close.
teacher in a special school, and all the staff were complaining that when the children came in after lunchtime, there was riots in the corridor. And so he was looking at it, and he was stood outside, and one of the children came up to him, probably a 12, 13-year-old, and said, do you know what? If you sent them through in a different order, because all the coats are in the first part of the corridor, and when that class goes in first, they're all taking the coats off when the others come in, and it causes problems. So this head teacher, Dave, I'll call him, yes, and that's his real name, goes into school and tells the staff, we're going to change the order because I've realised what's going on is, and they changed. He was a hero, Dave. It was a 13-year-old who'd come up with the solution just by talking.
Well, Glyn, we have to bring it to a close. You were going to say something. I don't know if you want to.
I just to pick up on Neil's point about a clear and compelling goal and exciting people. What's DFE doing to excite us now? To give us boundaries, to allow schools to operate with individuality to serve the children that they do. We don't. We're talking about fidelity. Even on courses now from MPQs, you've got to use a script so that it's delivered with fidelity. That's not, the children who come through are not all the same. I've got to adapt every day to meet the needs of those children, and that's where the joy comes.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So how do we? Well, I can't believe our listening figures, Neil, are going through the roof at the moment. The video cast is trundling along, but we've got incredible download figures. So if there is a head teacher or a governor or a trustee or somebody in a leadership team who wants to get in touch with you about this, where do they go?
LinkedIn is probably easiest place to find me. Or Leader Connect, leader-connect.co.uk is our website, or I've also got a Neil Jurd website. So it's actually quite hard not to find me, for which I apologise.
And I'll put the link into that. If you're watching on the video, you'll see it. Obviously, on the podcast, it won't be there, but you can you've listened to it and you can get it from playing that little clip back. But gents, thank you so much for joining us today. And I keep saying this, and this is why it's always difficult to fit new people in. We'd love to hear in about 12 months' time how it's going, because this really feels as though it's a sort of it's manageable. It's not too time consuming. It feels as though it's affecting people in a positive way. So let's hope the school that's had that having the inspection today, that those inspectors acknowledge that focus and that comes out strongly in their inspection. So we'll see you hopefully in 18 months' time or so. Yeah. Hopefully with lots of good stories about it. So thank you all very much for watching and for listening. Frankistan Chat, the weekly chat, is back next week. So until then, it's goodbye from us. Thanks, gents.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Nice to see you.